I used to work night shifts at a public library in a small town tucked away in northern Ontario. It wasn't a particularly big building. 2 floors, built in the 1940s, with worn carpets and that unmistakable old paper smell that clings to every corner. The lighting was dim, the furniture was outdated, and during winter months, the heating barely made a difference. It was the kind of place where silence didn't just exist, it pressed in on you. I was a college student at the time and grateful for the night shift. It gave me a quiet place to study while getting paid, and the few people who came in after 7 p.m. were mostly regulars, retired teachers, college kids, or the occasional insomniac with nowhere better to go. But the part of the library that always unsettled me was the basement. Technically, it wasn't open to the public. It was an archive room where the oldest books, newspaper records, and town documents were stored. My job involved filing things down there once or twice a week, usually around closing. The basement could only be accessed by a metal spiral staircase tucked behind the main help desk. At the bottom was a heavy iron gate with a padlock, and inside, well, it looked like time had stopped. No windows, concrete walls, long rows of bookshelves that stretched farther than you'd expect for such a small building. The lighting was poor, and some bulbs flickered so much it was honestly better to bring your own flashlight. One night, around 10:15 p.m, I was working alone. The librarian had already left early due to a family emergency, so I was the only person in the entire building. Outside, it had started to rain. The kind of slow, cold October rain that patters steadily and turns the whole world into grey. I was doing some inventory checks when I noticed a cart of books marked archive, which meant I had to go downstairs. I grabbed the ring of keys from the front desk and turned on the flashlight app on my phone, more out of habit than necessity. The overhead light at the top of the staircase flickered as I opened the gate. I descended slowly. Every step creaked like it hadn't been oiled in decades. When I reached the bottom, I unlocked the gate, stepped inside, and pulled the heavy door shut behind me. The smell of mildew hit me instantly. The single fluorescent bulb overhead buzzed softly, casting long shadows between the shelves. I started moving toward the local history section, which was near the back. As I walked, the floor beneath me groaned slightly, though I wasn't walking on wood. It always puzzled me, that sound. Concrete shouldn't groan like that. I shelved the first few books, humming softly to distract myself. But then I heard it, faint whispering, like someone was speaking behind me, but too quietly to make out. I turned around fast. No one. Just rows of shelves standing silent. I paused. Listened. Nothing. Trying to shrug it off, I returned to stacking the books. I told myself it could have been my own breath echoing strangely. Old buildings made weird sounds, especially when empty. I had just placed the final book when I heard it again. Closer, a whisper, 2 words, help me. My heart skipped. I turned slowly this time. Nothing, just that flickering light and silence. This time I didn't pretend it was nothing. I walked briskly back toward the gate. I was done. I wasn't going to wait to hear a third whisper. That's when I saw the gate. Closed, locked. I stopped in my tracks. I hadn't closed it. I never would have. I rushed to it and pulled. Locked tight. I fumbled for the keys, hand shaking now, and tried each one in the padlock. I dropped the ring once, swore under my breath, picked it back up, and finally got the right one in. As I started to unlock the gate, something crashed behind me. A loud metallic clatter, like a shelf had fallen. I turned. A book was lying on the floor, in the middle of the aisle. Not near the shelf I was working on, a completely different section. Then another book fell, closer this time. I turned back to the gate and opened it fully. The moment I stepped into the stairwell, the light overhead snapped off. I looked up, total darkness, and then, from behind me, I heard slow footsteps, slapping softly against the basement floor. Coming toward me, I didn't look back. I ran, up the stairs 2 at a time, gripping the railing so hard my knuckles went white. I reached the top, slammed the gate shut, and locked it. I stood there, panting, trying to catch my breath. The basement light came back on, empty. But the last thing I saw before it flickered again was a figure barely visible, standing just beyond the shelves. I didn't go back down there again, not that night, not ever. A few days later, I told my supervisor. She said something strange. "You're not the first," she said quietly. That basement, a janitor once refused to clean it, said he saw a little girl crouched under the shelves, whispering. But there's never been any reports of children down there. I gave my notice that same week. To this day, I can't walk into an old library without feeling like someone is watching me from between the shelves. Back in 2017, I used to work at a small family-owned pet shop on the outskirts of a quiet town. It wasn't anything special. Just a modest little building with a green awning, a few windows full of bird cages and fish tank daycare, and a faded sign that read, Sunny Paws Pets and Supplies. Pets and Supplies. The shop wasn't 24/7, but during winter, the owner asked one of us to stay overnight every now and then to keep the heat running, monitor the newer animals, and do a deep cleaning when no customers were around. We rotated the shift, and truthfully, I didn't mind doing it. The pay was better, and I thought being alone with the animals overnight would be kind of peaceful. I was wrong. It was early January. Snow had been falling non-stop for 3 days and the roads were practically empty. That night, I came in around 9:30 p.m. and planned to clock out by 6 a.m. I had my headphones, some snacks, and a podcast lined up to help pass the time. The shop itself had a cozy layout, rodents and reptiles in the back, birds in the middle, and fish tanks lining the walls. There was a narrow hallway behind the register that led to a small supply closet and a back room where deliveries were kept. That back room had no windows and one heavy emergency exit with an alarm system. It was always locked by 11:30 p.m. I had cleaned most of the cages, topped up the food and water, and was now just wiping down the bird perches in the center aisle. I remember the rhythmic chirping around me, the hum of the heat lamps in the reptile section, and the low bubbling sounds from the aquariums, all until I heard something fall. It came from the bird aisle, just a small clatter, like a perch had been knocked over or a cage door swinging open. I turned around, expecting to see a parakeet fluttering in panic, but everything looked untouched, except for one thing. One of the bird cages was open. Specifically, the cage with 4 yellow-green parakeets that had just arrived 2 days earlier. All 4 of them were gone. Now, that cage had a twist latch that was very hard to open, even for me. I froze for a second, then began scanning the aisles for any sign of movement. No birds, no fluttering, no sound. Guys, I said out loud, half laughing at how absurd I felt. You can't go far? Come on. I walked slowly toward the supply shelves, nothing, no signs of feathers, no chirping, no shadows moving. Then I heard something else, a whisper. It came from the back room. At first I thought it might have been the heating duct shifting, or maybe a mouse. But it was unmistakably a voice, very low, very slow. It said something like, over here. My skin prickled instantly. That room should have been empty. I hadn't even been in there yet tonight. Still, I tried to stay rational. Maybe someone slipped in earlier before I locked up. Maybe one of the delivery guys had left something behind and came to collect it. I grabbed the flashlight from the front counter, just in case, and walked toward the back hallway. When I opened the supply closet to double-check, empty, I reached the back room and gently turned the knob. Unlocked. I pushed the door open. It was dark. The only light came from a sliver of moonlight peeking through a gap between the door and the frame. It cast a thin silver line across the floor. At first glance, I didn't see anything. No boxes had shifted. No sign of an animal. But then I caught a sound. A slow, dragging scrape. Like someone's hand or foot being pulled across the cement floor. Hello? I asked loud. If you're back here, this is private. That's when something brushed against my ankle. I jumped back with a sharp gasp. The flashlight flicked on as I steadied my hand. Nothing there. The room was empty. Silent, still, but I noticed something odd. The emergency door at the far end. It was slightly open. Now that wasn't possible. That door had an auto-lock and an alarm that would blare if it opened. But I hadn't heard anything. I approached it slowly. The metal door creaked softly as I pushed it fully open. Cold air blew in. Snow covered the ground outside. But there were no footprints. Not mine. Not anyone's. Just clean, untouched snow. And then, from behind me in the room, the whisper again. Only this time it was louder. He doesn't like the lights. I turned fast, heart thudding, but again, no one there. I slowly backed out of the room, shut the emergency door tight and locked it. I bolted the front door of the shop as well, turned on every single light, and sat behind the counter for the next 5 hours without moving. The animals were dead silent. No chirps, no squeaks. Even the hamsters had stopped spinning their wheels. Around 6 a.m. My manager, Asadbai, came in. He saw the expression on my face and didn't even ask. I led him straight to the birdcage. Still open. No birds. We opened the back room together. Nothing was missing. Nothing was missing. Nothing was moved. But there, on the inside of the emergency door, was a wet smudge, like someone had touched it with a muddy hand, but the snow outside was undisturbed. Asad checked the security footage later that afternoon. At 11:36 p.m, you can clearly see me working in the bird aisle. You can also see behind me the cage door slowly swing open. No one touches it. Then the camera cuts to static for exactly 17 seconds. When it comes back on, the birds are gone. And the emergency door at the back? Open, but no one ever walks in and no one ever leaves.